Okay, so in this next segment, we're going to talk about the different parts to a voltaic cell, where you are creating energy through the creation of electrical current that's driven by a spontaneous chemical reaction to transfer those electrons. So let's go and look at the specific lecture objectives for this segment. So the learning objectives are going to be defining electric current, electric potential, and electromotive force, describing the parts to a voltaic cell and how the voltaic cells operate, and writing voltaic cells in cell diagram or line notation. Okay, so electrical current is simply the flow of electrons through a conductor in response to an electrical potential difference, very similar to water flowing downhill in response to a difference in gravitational potential energies. If you have an electrical potential, then you get a flow of electrons down that electrical potential, the same as you get a flow of water. So the electrical current is, in this metaphor, the flow of the water, the flow of electrons going downstream, except downstream here is not downstream vertically, it's down in electric potential. And so electric current is simply the amount of electric charge that passes a point in a given period of time. So it's whether the electrons are flowing through a wire or as ions flowing a solution, it's the amount of electric charge passing a point per unit time. And so a current, the units we use there is the number of electrons that flow through the system per second. Now it'd be very awkward units to count the literal number of electrons per second because it'd be so many in both cases. So the SI unit is ampere, or excuse me, the SI unit is ampere or amp. So 1 ampere of current is 1 coulomb of charge flowing each second, where, and it's 6.242 times 10 to the 18th electrons per second. You can see why we don't want to actually be looking at electrons per second, but really current is just a way of measuring electrons per second. So potential difference and electromotive force. So the difference in the potential energy of electrons at a cathode and anode is the potential difference. And really you can take the potential difference of electrons at any point along a circuit. And that potential is essentially like what's the difference in elevation in water flowing downhill. Any point you can take a potential difference there. The unit is a volt. So a volt is a joule of energy per coulomb of charge. So obviously if you have more charge going through, you're going to have more energy. If you have twice as much water flowing by a certain point, that will carry more energy. But the volt is equivalent to like the elevation. If you have a small amount of water coming through, then you're not going to get very much gravitational energy being converted into kinetic energy as it goes down, right? Because there's not much water. Same way, if you have the same voltage drop, you're going to get different amount of energy. It's exactly proportional to the number of electrons that are going through. So a volt is a joule of energy per coulomb of charge. Okay, and so the entire potential pushing the electrons through the wire is called the electromotive force, or the EMF. Now, this is something that is really a bad name, but we're sort of stuck with it now because the electromotive force is not a force. It's not like, oh, gravitational potential is the difference in energy, and the force, the gravitational force is the actual directional vector of the where the water is going. It's the amount of chemical energy being applied to the electrons. It's the total amount of energy you would get from the chemical reaction, but which, if you look at the very endpoints between the two anodes, that is equal to the potential, but the potential is defined at any 2 points along the circuit, whereas the electromotive force is the total amount of sort of non-electrical energy that is converted into electrical energy for the circuit as a whole. So it's a horrible name. So just think of it, the EMF as it's a potential difference is just defined between any 2 points in a circuit. The electromotive force is the total amount of other energy that can be converted into electrical energy to power the circuit. So the potential difference again is the energy difference between any 2 points on the electronic circuit. The EMF is the total amount of other energy that is being converted into electrical energy for the entire cell. So you can talk about the electromotive force for the cell, and then you can talk about the potential difference at any 2 points on the circuit. Again, really horrible name because it's not a force in the sense that the gravitational force is, the derivative of the potential energy. The electromotive force is not the derivative of the potential difference. It's the total amount of energy available in the electric circuit due to the non-electrical energy, in this case coming from chemical energy. Okay, so that's the important point there to remember.